What's going on YouTube? Welcome to my channel Money Moves with K. I am K, and today we're going to talk about where to buy property with little money before everyone else does. Okay, so part of investing in real estate is to find places where there will be a boom and you can get in right now for the low. So without further ado, let's get to it. So the very first place I want to discuss is Birmingham, Alabama. Now I've mentioned Birmingham, Alabama in the past. I actually did a video on Alabama in general for properties under $1,000. Make sure you check that out. I'll link it in the description. But Birmingham, Alabama has healthcare, logistics, banking, amongst other anchors, professional anchors within the city that make this a good candidate if you wanted to invest in this area for a low enough price so that your cash on cash return is high enough to actually receive a profit, right? This is the name of the game. You want to receive a profit. So I'll discuss this more in depth, like what is a cash on cash return? How do you calculate it? And how do you analyze these rental properties from beginning to end? At even lower prices than this on my other YouTube channel. Make sure you check it out. It's called the 10K Property Report. It's a spinoff of my free newsletter, which you can also get. I'll link that in the comment section. I'll pin it in the comment section, and I'll also link it in the description. Both, I'll do that for you so that you can not only get the free newsletter with properties under 10K, but you can also check out the 10K Property Report YouTube channel. All right, very easy to just subscribe and never miss an upload. All right, so Birmingham, Alabama. So if you can already tell, I'm on Zillow, and you can see these properties range, and I put in my search engine from $5,000 to $100,000. Okay, so you have $17,000. This it appears to be a tear down. I don't necessarily know. Just looking at the pictures, this is $17,000. Let's click on this so we can actually see how it looks and if it's worth our time. Now, I do know, and I'm very aware that what you're thinking is you need to identify if this is a good neighborhood, looking at the schools, I just told you about the income status or some job anchors in the area. These are all factors you're going to take into consideration when you're trying to look for a good rental market to invest in, okay? So I would not choose this one because, as just an example, you may need to do a lot of work, but that's my personal opinion. Of course, this is for educational purposes only. You do your own due diligence. So if you see this property, say, this is perfect for me, then go for it. But that'll be on your own due diligence. Has nothing to do with K, all right? So moving on. If we scroll down, you can see other properties. This is $28,000. This is $29,000. And of course, you're looking to see not just the price, right? You also looking to see how much it will cost to repair, because that goes into your cash on cash return. And if it costs too much to repair, then you may fall below the threshold of actually making a profit, all right? And you want to have a good return on your investment, all right? So what I did was I've already gone through, I wanted to show you some of the cheaper properties. When I say cheap, that's subjective, but more affordable properties under $100,000. But I went through and I selected one property that stood out to me as something that would interest me, okay? So if you're not wanting to pay cash for the property, meaning you're not wanting to pay like $17,000 or whatever the case may be, and be done with it, and you're willing to do a mortgage or get a mortgage on a property, whether you're staying in it yourself, which you can get an FHA loan, or you are wanting to get a conventional loan, as an example, and use this as strictly a rental property, you can do that, okay? Of course, you need to make sure your credit is together and all other factors need to be in order, in line. However, this stood out to me. Let's run down why it stood out to me. First of all, the price. I saw the price. I said $100,000. Cool. Now, Zillow estimates that it'll be $610 a month. That incorporates your taxes, your property taxes for the property. That incorporates your down payment, a lot of different things. So those things will vary. So I'm not going to focus too much on the $610 a month for the property. I want to focus more on the appearance, and what I would suggest is, well, not suggest anything. Let's just look at the appearance and look at some pictures. So this property appears to be renovated, right? It looks really nice. Of course, you would get an inspection to ensure that it is really nice, even under the surface, okay? But if the property is foundationally sound, more expensive things such as the HVAC, the roof are pretty good, and it looks like this, which is pretty nice in my opinion, right? I would say do further due diligence and see if this property is in a good area. You want to look at the area. You want to look at the income for the area, the crime rate for the area. And you also want to look at what properties are renting for. All right. So let's scroll down to let's go back to the listing. And we're going to scroll down to I think it's in the middle. They should, or the end of the listing, they should have a Zestimate. Now the Zestimate is here. Now on my other channel, I'll show you ways in which you can get the Zestimate, means estimate, for rent outside of the Zestimate from Zillow, because a lot of times this may be blank. So you have to figure out, how do I know what the rents are in the area, right? So if Zestimate says $1,267 a month, then okay, is that good or bad, right? Those are questions you may have, and you will have to look at the cash on cash return, the return on your investment, a lot of other factors, right? But most investors look at that cash on cash return, which I'll discuss in further detail on my other channel, because I will dive deep on these properties and how do you know what's good or not? Like as a new investor, that was one of my struggles before I started to do my real estate appraisal courses and stuff like that. I was trying to figure out, is this a good area or not? Who knows, right? So, and you can't just look at a property and say, oh, it's good or it's not. You really have to look at that rental income if you are wanting to rent the property. All right. So that's Birmingham, Alabama. I also wanted to mention to you Rockford, Illinois. Okay. So Rockford, Illinois. So as soon as I hear Illinois, and a lot of other investors hear Illinois, they may think directly of Chicago, which there's no diss to Chicago. Chicago is actually my top viewers. Okay. Hello, Chicago. So there's no diss to Chicago. However, a lot of investors may be a little leery to invest in Illinois just because they have an emotional disconnect with that area. All right. However, if you're a savvy investor, you know that your rents can be a lot higher in these particular areas, the Midwest area, and you can collect even more so than maybe a Birmingham, Alabama, right? Not always necessarily the case, but a lot of times if you find the right property, you can purchase low and rent high, okay, which is beautiful for an investor. Now, the cash on cash return that you're looking to get around is 8 to 12% ish. If it's higher than that, that's perfect. But you want to really focus on, in my opinion, you really want to focus on a property that is low enough, but doesn't need a lot of repairs or work. And that's the tricky part of investing. Because if you find a property for $10,000 and you put $100,000 into the property, and you can only get $800 for rent, that doesn't make sense, okay? So yeah, keep that in mind. Or if you get, I'll keep that example. It doesn't make sense. You want a higher rent, and Rockford, Illinois provides that. So they have properties under $100,000. Let's go back up to the top. This is $45,000. Of course, you're gonna look at the pictures, you're gonna look at the details and do your own due diligence. And I have one that I picked out that seems pretty good. Of course, you have to look with a magnifying glass to ensure that this is the property for you. So these are the pictures for this property. I've noticed in this area, there are a lot of 3 bedrooms, 1 bath, which is not necessarily bad, but if you can, try to get as many bedrooms and as many bathrooms as possible. It's just, it appeals to a wider audience, all right? But it also depends on the area, and this area may just have a lot of 3 bedrooms, 1 bath. I'm not sure. So as you can tell, it's a clean property, right? It's clean from the inside. You have to look at foundation and all those more expensive things or items I mentioned earlier, such as HVAC, roof, etc., plumbing. Those are all important things that could really diminish your profit going into a property. Now, this carpet, I don't know the condition. I know the look of the carpet seems to be older, but when you're getting a rental property to rent, you do not want to over repair or renovate a home, because that will kill your profit in your pockets. Okay. It's all about money, meaning, and I mean that by like saying it's all about the numbers. Numbers matter. Numbers. Okay. And this is a nice small little home, right? I love small properties, by the way. If you're a first-time investor, I highly suggest, of course, that's my opinion, I suggest that you start small. If you're trying to buy 10 units with your first rental, it's possible, especially if you have the money to do it. But I will say it's 10 times the headache, because you have 10 times the roof problems, you have 10 times the HVAC problems and other problems that are associated with that property. All right. You want to make sure you can get a property that is sustainable for you and not overwhelming. Okay. And don't be afraid. I get a lot of people say, well, I'm not in Illinois. Why would I invest in Illinois? I mean, if you're in New York City and you have the cash on hand to do a down payment for a conventional loan and closing costs and all that's taken care of, if you have the funds, in my example, then I would highly suggest that you look elsewhere if you cannot buy in the city that you live in. Okay, you can get a property manager. That is a cost. If you don't want a property manager, you can do it by yourself. My husband and I, have literally been investing since we were stationed in Germany, and we were managing our properties, not just in Germany, but around the States as well. So we don't always invest in the city we live in, but that does take a special type of person and the expertise. So I will say that, and that's just being honest. All right. So Rockford, Illinois. Now, a downside with Rockford, Illinois is that the taxes may be a little higher. Okay. So keep that in mind. And there are workarounds with that. That may be a different video if folks are interested in that video. The last area that I want to talk about is Augusta, Georgia. So Augusta, Georgia has the anchor or job anchor of the military. So Fort Gordon is in Augusta, Georgia. And I mentioned this earlier, and even in my past videos, my husband is a retired military vet. He served 20 years in the military, and we've been stationed a little bit of everywhere. So this is our personal thing. We like to invest in areas where there is a military presence or a military base is what I'm just referring to, right? Because we know that steady income for our rental. Okay. So keep that in mind. You want to find places where the income or, there is an anchor in that area. So as you can see, these properties range, this is $25,000. You definitely have to do due diligence to ensure that these are reasonable enough to even pursue. You have $49,000, $43,000. The list goes on. Also, don't be afraid to try to find properties near colleges and universities. That's another way to expand the occupancy of a property. So you may be able to rent by the room. That's another trend that real estate is kind of heading towards, is renting by the room, especially with affordability being an issue. So you have to broaden your horizons and keep everything open so that you can make the best choice for your property and follow all rules, regulations, and laws for your county or city to ensure that you are appropriately going by the book with real estate. You don't want it to bite you in the butt later. All right, keep that in mind. All right, that's the end of my video. I truly hope that this video helped you in some way and you were able to see 3 areas that you may want to consider when you're looking at investing in real estate to be a landlord with not so much money. Okay. If you made it this far in the video, I truly do appreciate it. Thank you so very much. In the comment section, just ask a question about what was discussed today. All right. I may be able to get to you. A lot of times, the first couple people that do comment, I am able to answer those questions. After that, it kind of becomes a lot. So ask a question in the comment section that you are truly interested in based on this video or what I've discussed. And like I said, thank you so much. Until next time, guys, you stay blessed. Peace.